Good morning. My name is Conrad Drung. I'm from Orchestra Networks, and I have here with me today two individuals, Les Fondy, Vice President of Information Technology from Ubisoft, and Scott Moore, Director of Technical Services at Orchestra Networks. And today we're going to be talking about MDM for the media and entertainment industry. The webinar will actually be in two parts. There'll be first a case study provided by Les about their experiences implementing MDM at Ubisoft, and then the second part, which will be a demo led by Scott Moore. Okay, with that, Les, take it away.
I've used our Raving Rabbits as kind of the content for this. I'll give you a bit more of an overview of Ubisoft as we move through this, but I think this is interesting because these colorful and mischievous characters tend to be the best representation of actually implementing MDM, and I've called it the MDM journey as a title. So to give you a little bit about Ubisoft, we've been around since 1986. We're the second largest in-house development publisher in the world. We have 26 studios in 19 different countries. We're now more than 8,000 employees, and of those, 7,100 are dedicated to producing our games. We distribute our products in 55 countries, and during our fiscal year 12 and 13, our total revenue was 1.2 million euros, and we are the third largest independent publisher in both Europe and the U.S. And on the right, you can see some of our products and the numbers that we've sold life to date for all of our different products. This isn't necessarily the entire list, but it gives you an idea of the variety and the number of products that we actually do distribute, and those numbers give you a bit of an idea of if you think through the master data management hierarchy, what it would take to support a list that's this extensive. So the part one of the discussion, I'll give you an idea of our vision and objectives when what led us to implementing MDM and part of the process in selecting Orchestra and our selection process as well. So our organization is, as I mentioned, is global, and the data elements that we selected to implement we'll discuss in a moment, but I'll give you kind of an organizational profile. We're essentially a production, a distribution, and legal is the third part, and you'll understand later why that's important in this organization distribution. But as I mentioned, we have 26 production studios worldwide. We have two distribution zones, North, Central, and South America, and EMEA for Ubisoft games, and we do actually produce a number of third-party products as well. That's where we don't actually have the development resources in-house, but we may use some other smaller development studios in different places. And then the third leg is legal, and that manages all of our external IPs and our royalties process as well. Our key business issues that led us through this were trying to find a way to take the distribution of multiple teams in different countries and in different organizations and pull them together. Those silos, as you can imagine, generated the need for people to maintain their own set of master data for both local and language purposes. And obviously, because of that, we found it impossible to have a single view of our products globally, and certainly we had very little, if any, governance to support that as well. So the core master data hierarchies that we included in the process, and you'll notice as I talk about these three elements, you'll see the numbers in parentheses. Those are an indication of today what our current numbers are within these different areas. So for we chose project, product, and contracts as our initial areas, and certainly as we move through time and as we move through upgrading our product, we're looking at other areas that make sense as a master data management as well. And my advice to you is that you attempt to start smaller with those things that are most important, and I think it will lead to more success for you as you implement your own programs. So from a project standpoint, this is obviously a description of the projects that we take in each of our different production studios, and it's a way to maintain unique IDs and descriptions of the products that we're building in flight. And you'll notice one thing that we found important is we linked all of the projects to budgets as well, and that helps us on the finance side. Secondly, we targeted product, and we have over 25,000 of those. And there's an incredibly complex data structure that goes into that, and I think this probably spans multiple industries as well. But for us, we defined a franchise, brand family, stock keeping unit. We linked all of those to projects as well, and there are a number of different elements inside, but these are the major attributes. And then third, we picked contracts, and this is what gave us the ability to define sales and legal attributes of our properties as they tie to both products and projects as well. So this helps us keep track of the licensor, our different territories, and it links to the royalties that we include in these contracts as well. And currently we're maintaining a little over 1,800 of those. So from an organizational standpoint, to give you an idea of from a production, distribution, and legal standpoint, the places where we have multiple links across, as well as very persistent or consistent ownership. The production team owns projects, the distribution teams own the products, and then the legal teams own the contracts. And it's important as you look forward into establishing ownership, and you set up your steering committee for how you're going to actually develop a process and enable it with a product. It's very useful that you understand both hard lines and then the connections as well too, because it establishes accountability and responsibilities in the interfaces as well. So our global business objectives were to improve communication and collaboration between the different organizations and functions. As I mentioned before, we had so many silos, and so one of the major activities that you need to make sure that you establish are the data governance for all of the business domains, and certainly make sure that it also includes the different countries or organization as well. For this to be successful, no one should be left out. Probably the longest part of the project for us was just getting a definition. Many people had a different concept of what franchise meant. Many people have different definitions of royalties, and that transverses through all of the elements and the data that I mentioned before. So it was just getting very good definitions of terms. And when you're dealing with a multi-language environment too, that can be very challenging. So the human or the sociology of implementing this is incredibly important, certainly something that most of you have probably heard. We were able to streamline, or we wanted to streamline the master data integration with our existing IT applications, and later on I'll share with you some of the numbers of the connections and how they connect to the MDM hub. So for specific organizations, production wanted a better way to manage projects and improve their game profitability. And they do that through defining consistently the way that they produce different games. Typically, video games are developed on different consoles, and whether it's an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Wii or online or Facebook or mobile games, we're getting to the point now where those are all connected. So through better governance and managing of that production piece when they're created, and they can also be created in different countries as well by different production teams. The more that they're integrated in and developing for different platforms, the easier it is in the end to understand your profitability. For distribution, this just gave us the ability to improve on reporting both locally and globally, and it's much easier for us to roll up the numbers from a headquarters standpoint as well. And from a legal standpoint, this was incredibly important for us, because as we deal with our first-party partners, it's incredibly important that you understand for what particular product, and now even what digital item, how much has been sold, whether it's through the first-party publishers or environments from one country to the other, because we may have different agreements with those first parties from a royalty standpoint across countries. And the same thing goes for any of the digital products as well, as they're implemented into this process. So next I'll give you kind of an idea of our implementation process as well. So our approach was for our business users to be able to understand and execute a proactive way for authoring, sharing, and collaborating as we created products. Today, the only way that a project or product or contract can even get into the system is through this process. And I have to say that this is the most important aspect of governance, is that unless people are able to follow the rules, they just don't get to play. And so for MDM is the hub for us, and with a couple of different exceptions. There are about 30 different application interfaces, and where they get project, product, or contract data is directly from the hub. And then we synchronize it with all 30 of those applications. There are two places where the hub actually gets input other than through the application naturally, and that's through our two instances of PeopleSoft, and the way that we use product and pricing attributes that actually get fed back into the MDM process, and those interfaces are treated just like a normal user. The way to interact with that is through a very standard and governed process as well too. So the key requirements for our business users was that they wanted just a very simple user interface. So MDM is for a lot of people, there's a day-to-day front end for all business users and viewing and updating and improving master data. Now I say this as a day-to-day because it is just part of the way that they work. I don't want people to get the feeling that this is an arduous process that requires someone to sit in front of a screen for 8 hours a day to manage this process. I think what's interesting is that with the combination of the workflow and collaboration that we got as part of our implementation of Orchestra, we were able to make this a streamlined process for people to do more than just this all day long, and yet it still helps maintain the governance. another thing that was interesting about the product is that the user interface is super simple. You saw the numbers of different entities that we have around the world. We did not have to develop a very complex training mechanism for people to learn to use the system. It was web-based, and most of it was self-training with information that we shared to them. I imagine that we might have to do multiple web-based leader-led training sessions with people, but for the most part, their localization, interaction with the tool, people were able to pick it up very quickly and understand it. The human side of it and understanding the definitions is a little bit outside of the tool and one of the complex pieces, but from a need to get a very simple UI, Orchestra just made this incredibly easy for us. And then secondly, we wanted something that was more model-driven. As you can imagine, there's, we'll talk toward the end about the digital data aspect of this, but the ability of the product to give us a visual representation of what we wanted to accomplish in creating our full product life cycles and the attributes and hierarchies is so much easier than kind of the spreadsheet or the tabular format that people are accustomed to. The ability to build in the workflow rules where we validate what's created was incredibly helpful for us as well too. One of the aspects that we found extremely useful was that the WYSIWYG nature of the visual UI in creating what you actually get was very, very similar. Typically, you don't find that what you're visualizing is actually turned into what you actually get to. So this gave our users a much quicker learning curve up front as well too. So third, we wanted to be able to do this agilely. So once again, as I mentioned, the visual aspects of it, this gave us the ability to see and then understand what was actually delivered. So the modeling and the ability to move from one aspect to the next very quickly and play as you move forward fit into our sprints very effectively, and so it helped us move very quickly through the three elements fast. What was great for the user community too is that they were able to see product very quickly. They were able to see projects very quickly, and they were able to then also do similar things with the contracts as well. But the different businesses were able to see things being produced, and so it didn't feel like a long 18-month project where you don't actually see anything until right at the end, and you don't really understand what you're going to get until it's actually completed. They were able to see things as we moved through the process much, much more quickly. So the solution, and I understand that we'll talk a little bit more about this later, so I'll go more quickly through this, is there's one unified web user interface for modeling, for validation, for authoring, for our hierarchy management, controlling versions, and then the security aspects of being able to, across our different business groups, across different geographic locations, the ability to have multiple and different role-based security made it very, very effective. People do like to keep their things separate, and so that part of the tool seemed to be very, very interesting to the people that were using it. So our methodology is, as we established business teams and we aligned them with the IT teams that were eventually going to support the solution. This isn't new or novel, but we had our typical steering committee, focused business groups, and then the technologists that learned along the way together in implementing the eventual solution. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we built data governance, and then we were able to, using the Orchestra product, go through this iterative model of modeling the different segments and test out the workflows so that we were able to create revisions and different iterations of what people were going to see very quickly. And it actually, I think, really propelled user adoption simply because it was very easy for people to use and learn and then go through the life cycle of products. And they could also see how this could be, how this would last and change over time. So our sprints were typically in the 3 to 4 week life cycle. So I'll give you an idea of as the last part is how we recognize the benefits and the ROI for our MDM implementation. So from a business enhancement standpoint, just the efficiency and time to market. So we took a typical quality of work-life balance, reduction in cost through the fewer numbers of people that were actually maintaining this on their own prior to the implementation. So we certainly were able to do things much more quickly in creating new attributes for any of the elements. We didn't have to manage separately everything, and we were able to easily integrate our different compilations and bundles for our products. Managing accessories became much more easy for us to manage. We were able to, something we didn't have before is we were able to actually include the ratings management for our products as well, that we hadn't originally anticipated as a requirement. We were able to just add it to it because of the ease of modeling. And then the way that the product allowed us to automatically create objects certainly saved time from doing them across the world and each and every different location. The auto-created objects just made that easy for us to cut time there. And then certainly from a reporting standpoint, we were able to, for any of the different data elements, project, product, or contract, we were able to now do reporting both from a local or an individual product basis to a global view of the same thing. And something that we hadn't had before was a history of what changes over time happen to different products or projects, and now we were able to do that. We used a third-party BI platform to do our reporting. What made that so easy is that the connector to the MDM data was delivered through a very simple API for that aspect as well. And then so some of our the ways that we enhance the business is we define better governance and data quality. So the workflows gave us a chance to do instant QA. It gave us the ability to cleanse the 25,000 plus products and the 1,800 plus contracts. Everything was very easy, one, for us to cleanse, and then secondly for us to maintain. And believe it or not, this is more human-based, but we we sort of established a common language that was driven by the product and the implementation that we probably wouldn't have been able to accomplish on our own without it. And then certainly our IT integration in the way that we're connecting to all the different applications and common interfaces made it much easier to sustain going forward. I don't know that we've necessarily looked at over time what we were able to save in the standardization of the interfaces, but I'm certain we've been able to be much more efficient there as well. And so to kind of wrap it up, I'll give you an idea of what's happening now. So we're currently in our upgrade planning for EBX5. I think what's driving this more than anything is some of the newer elements in the product that I'm sure Scott will share with you in a bit. But from our industry standpoint, we're in this migration from a physical world to a digital world, and we distinguish that between the initial content that's delivered in a game in whatever format through whatever channel versus the extra content. So extra content for us is a new mode, a game extension, a new mission. That could be a new song for a music game, or it could be a new character or dance sequence for a dance game. It could be a new map. For inside the game, we have durable goods, consumable goods, and we also have in-game currency. And then certainly from a download standpoint, we have different characters, vehicle soundtracks, clothes. All of those are connected to what was once just a delivered DVD element or a delivered download. So you can see that we're now having to maintain digital items just like we did physical items. And what's interesting about the product, although we do have to change our nomenclature a bit, the modeling has given us the ability to experiment with how we would actually integrate a digital format right along with physical, and it gives us the ability to understand both of those, and we can do it consistently globally, which we couldn't have done before. And so to make it a bit more vivid, I'd mentioned the different platforms. You have the console, you have online, you have mobile, and you have social. And all of those different worlds have the capability to share different or the same digital items. And so you can see that it becomes very important for us to understand, and across any of those platforms, how a particular item is used, how it's purchased, and certainly how it's maintained. And we can use the same item across different games as well too, so you can understand how it's important for us to know what things our gamers are engaging with, or what they're appreciating more than anything else.
Well, thank you, Les. I guess right now we'll switch to Scott.
And thanks again, Les, for that update on Ubisoft. It's always fun to see what you guys are up to. Big fan of the video games. Also a big fan of the movies and television industry. What I wanted to do today was give a demonstration of our product, give you actual hands-on usage with our product. So I'm going to log in. We are a web-based application, so you do not need to have a fat client or an install of any type. You just point your browser to our server and you can log in. First, I'm going to log in as administrator, but later on during the presentation, I will log in as different business users, and you can see how EBX dynamically changes what is presented, both from a UI perspective and a permissions perspective as people log in. When I log into EBX, across the top is a number of icons that indicate different work I can do, such as web services, data modeling, workflows, access to data. And when I want to do access to data, I could choose what we call a data space I want to work in. And a data space is something unique to EBX. It's the concept of separating out domains or work that is branched or in isolation, working in the past, the present, the future. So you could see here I could be working in previous quarters information or future quarters, testing what-if scenarios, maybe an import branch or a particular product branch. In this case, we want to talk about products, so I'll choose my products data space. And also within the data space, we can further slice things up into different domains or data sets, as we call them. For instance, for products, I can be doing web portal products, pharmaceutical, restaurants, hardware, and in our case, the multimedia industry for titles. When I select titles, I'm now able to see the type of information we have within titles. Since EBX is a what you model is what you get scenario, we can have many domains, and those domains can interact with each other, such as talents. We could have information about directors, actors, various individuals that are going to participate in a video game or television series, etc. What role do they play, and what titles are they associated with? These can be in different domains, but simply reference to each other. For instance, the role will connect my titles to my my talents, my actors and my directors, etc. Another powerful thing about EBX is we also dynamically create hierarchies. So you do not need to have separate copies of data or duplication of information. We dynamically create the hierarchies off of the content itself. So for instance, if I wanted to see my role by the talent, I could find out for a given person, such as Amy Adams or Emma Stone, what roles do they play in various titles. But I could easily reverse that and say, well, no, I want to know based on the titles, what are the roles that are there? So in Iron Man 2, here are my actors. In Man of Steel, my directors and actors, etc. And I'm just creating these dynamically to change how EBX is presenting me the information, cross-domain or within my own domain. Very easy to do. Let me quickly show you how I can create a new hierarchy. I just select View, create a new view, and I could tell who has access to it. If I give it to everyone or just my business users or my stewards, they'll instantly have access to it. And what type of view is it? I'm going to join multiple tables or create hierarchies. In this case, let's create a hierarchy. By clicking Next, it presents me with all the dimensions that are available. In this case, let's say we want a given role based on the talent that's in that role and maybe the titles that that talent is associated with, and let's go by genre. You can see as I select a dimension, it gives me more options that that dimension has access to. So I can just create any relationships I want. And I'm going to prune this. What prune is saying is if there's a genre with no talent in any role for that title, don't include it. Don't include that genre as an empty node. Only show me leaf node all the way down to leaf node. So here I'm going to create that, and instantly EBX repositions everything. So here's action, and here's Iron Man, and here's Gwyneth Paltrow. But because of how I defined it, it says she's not just in Iron Man 2, but now I have the links to the other titles that she's participating in. It's a very powerful way for me to create dynamic hierarchies. I can secure these, make these fixed so that people can see them and interact with them, but they can't create new ones. Or I can allow my business users and my power users to create their own hierarchies as they see fit. And by the way, these hierarchies are maintainable. They're not just read-only. I can choose to move somebody around in this hierarchy. If this person, if Gwyneth Paltrow is actually an actor in a different film, this is a mistake, I can just move this to another section of my hierarchy. I can have multiple parents, so if I want her to participate in other movies, I can just reattach this same node to multiple places, maybe in First Iron Man, etc., of which she's already reattached. So hierarchies are extremely powerful. And of course, I can always click on Iron Man 2 and see the details of it, or go back and click on maybe Man of Steel and see the details of that. And when I click on an individual record, I get the details based on my permission. EDX automatically generates all these screens. You don't need programmers. You don't need DBAs. We figure all this out based on the model and the permissions. And you can have rich information such as links and hierarchies associated with this. If I wanted to, say, go to synopsis, I can see rich text here. I could also model my synopsis to have multiple synopsises per region. If rather than creating a whole new physical title, I just want to associate multiple synopsises per region, I could do that here in the synopsis group by saying for a given language, let's say Japanese. As I type Japanese in this drop-down list box, it reduces the selection. For Japanese, and maybe I'm going to get this from Google Translate, I want this synopsis. And I'll copy it, translate it to this Japanese text, and I could just paste it in. And now I have a Japanese specific. This is one way of modeling it. I could also create a child title with separate identification information for the Japanese content. For instance, let me say this. And also, by the way, I would usually do this in a controlled fashion. I wouldn't necessarily go right up against my master data. I would put my master in read-only mode and say that the title information can only be changed for Japanese content through a workflow. And what's nice about that is that I can govern who can change, who can approve, who looks at it, who's going to do all the different things that I need to do. So before I show you how to do a Japanese version, I'm just showing you another hierarchy and title that has both feature films and also series films. Here you can see various Superman television series and then the different seasons and the episodes for each of those seasons, as well as the feature films and maybe specific. This is the Chinese distribution of Man of Steel. I can have distribution channel, I could have language, I could have territory extensions, all of these specific. It's all based on how I model it. Let's do a workflow for Man of Steel in Japan. I'm going to go to my workflow tab here. And as an administrator, I don't have anything in my inbox because I'm not a business person doing work, but I do have the ability to monitor the active workflows. And I can see here various things that are happening. There's a video game being created, an iPhone app. This iPhone app for Lion King is going to be handled through different distribution channels. So we'll have metadata for iPhone, iTunes versus metadata if it's going to be resold as an Android app on Google Play, etc. But let's launch one for Man of Steel. Let's see. Launch new title. Call it Man of Steel Japan. I can't spell. Thank you. And I'm going to start this workflow. Now I can see in my active workflows that there is a Man of Steel Japan. I can look at its process. Here I can see green telling me that it completed a data space creation. We saw that earlier. That means that this new title is going to be held in isolation until it is validated, approved, and merged into master. And it's waiting for a business user to accept the create a new title. All those people who have business user roles have received an email notification describing this workflow that's been offered to them and a link to EBX. If they follow the link, they would come right into EBX. In this case, I know Carl received the email, so I'm logging in as Carl. He follows that link in his email, and he sees that he has 5 things to do in his inbox. But you may notice he has many less things to do. He can't do modeling. He can't do data services. But he can work on items in a controlled, governed format. One of them is to do Man of Steel in Japan. He's working on the other things. He's working on that Lion King app, etc. But he'll take and start. He's going to take it because it's offered to anyone in this role. Once he takes it, it's allocated to him, and he can start working on it. Notice EBX has changed the screen he sees based on his permissions. He doesn't have access to all the data, but he can start the process. So he's going to say Superman is my family. And he's going to give it a title number. When I tabbed away, EBX dynamically is running the business rules and validation rules against it. So it's telling me it has between 10 and 13 digits. It could also auto-generate these IDs. If I have a format where it's a smart ID or a compound ID, EBX can generate or validate those as well. And what type of feature is this? I'll say it's a feature. And notice here, there's information for seasons and episodes and episode parts. That's because until I tell it it's a feature, it doesn't know. But once I tell it it's a feature, it gets rid of the fields that are appropriate for an episode and shows me only feature-specific fields and telling me you have to give me a title. So we'll say this is Superman of Steel. But Man of Steel, we know this is Man of Steel. Rather than type all this information in, because I'm just doing a Japanese distribution, I'm going to actually relate this to the existing Superman. So in the parent relationship, I'm going to say Superman, I'm going to say Man of Steel, select that Man of Steel, and once I do that, we have an inheritance mechanism. You'll notice that EBX has now given me title, genre, rating, initial release date, also hooked me up into profit centers, accounting, my talent, etc. So I've inherited all of that from the original Superman, so that this Japanese distribution I can change. If I want to change the official title from Man of Steel to this Japanese title, I can do that. But EBX will remember what the original title was, so at any time I can go back to the inheritance or switch between. And again, in the synopsis, if I wanted to say the actual main synopsis for this is going to be this Japanese one, I can do that. And I can say stop inheriting the synopsis group for Japan because it's no longer relevant here, and I can delete that. Even though my parent still has it, see if I switch back, my parent still has it, I'm saying for this distribution, I don't need that. And I can add media with it if I want to put images or video associated with this, trailer information, official websites with links, any content for my content management system I could associate, etc. When I'm done, I can hit save and run all my business rules against it. They all pass, so I'm good to go. I could put a comment on here if I want my people in my workflow who are working with me to have that information. I could add a comment or accept it. Once I accept it, it moves along down the process. If I was to look at that in workflows, I could see that it has gone to an enriched title step. So that means it was not a duplicate, it's unique, and it's ready to enrich. But if you notice, there's a Man of Steel 2 here, and if I look where that is, that's in Create a New One. And if I look at Superman 5, that one is in a resolved duplicate. Apparently, there was information about Superman 5, or 6 rather, that was not unique. Let's take a look at what's going on there. That's been allocated to Mark. So I'm signing in as Mark. Mark has two things to work on. His inbox has a resolve possible duplicates and an enrich of Man of Steel Japan. We can see now that Man of Steel Japan has been created and is now waiting for enrichment from both the ops, R&D, as well as marketing. So this is happening in parallel. It's been offered to two groups. Both of those groups are going to enter their information and either move it through approval or send it back for enhancement. But resolve possible duplicates for Superman. When I look at this, I can see that it's now a suspect against multiple Supermans, the 1, the 2, the 3. Apparently, it is not sure which of these Supermans are the same or different. And I'm wondering, why is that? What does it think it's doing? I can either mark this as a definitive golden, saying, no, this is unique and it is definitive. I know it's unique. Or I can run the stewardship console and say, let's run this as a basis for a merge against one or more titles. So I'm going to sign out as Mark and sign back in as administrator to show you some of this matching stuff, because it's pretty cool. When I look at those titles again, I have the ability to run what we call the full matching stewardship interaction. This is different because it's not within a workflow. This is where I can start to hone in all of the different algorithms and how do I determine what is a duplicate and what's not. And we have a concept called cluster, and clusters tell me which one is which. This one looks good, so I'm going to go to that Man of Steel 2-1 and see what's going on with that one. If I look at here, I see those are not all golden. There's a suspect in the pivot. So let's launch the matching engine from here. And here I can say, well, how is it that I got to this suspect in pivot for Superman, Man of Steel 2? What was it? I can look at the policy view, and it says, well, there's a policy that's currently active against this record, which is a title comparison, which is doing a double metaphone on the title. I could click on this and change the matching algorithm. Maybe I want it to be Levenstein double metaphone or fuzzy text, maybe soundex for sound difference. I can add multiple match policies against it. And also I can tweak the minimum and maximum scores for stewardship versus survivorship. If I reach certain thresholds, I can describe to EBX how I automatically want these matches to be resolved. And then actions will be taken automatically, or what percentage of match I want manual intervention to launch this workflow for someone to then look at it. I can also go back to my cluster view. Let's say I want to take that cluster and do some work on it. I believe it's cluster number 11. So I'm going to show that cluster down here. I can review what's part of that cluster, and 89.9%. I just missed the automatic survivorship, so I'm in stewardship mode. Let's pretend that these were actually the same, and I can go into merge view. Here, EBX is going to show me each title side by side, however many suspects I have in this cluster, and allow me to either run a simulated merge based on my automatic rules, or to manually choose the surviving fields for each record. This allows the data steward to track what they're doing, how they're merging it. In the future, they can unmerge these things and put them back, etc. They can also do partial merge, which says save the merges that I've done manually, and I'll come back and finish them later, and all that. Another thing that's important about this is history. You want to know not only what merges happened and how can I undo them, but also what changes happened and who did them and what workflows, etc. So we do allow history. If I click on the history button, I can see actions view history, who changed what and when. It's color-coded. I can see which ones had become suspects, when a record was created, deleted, who did it, etc. If I look at my suspect record, I can double-click on any of these and get details to find out what information was changed. I can also do a full search on history and export history. Search is very powerful. If I wanted to look for just my Superman films, I could say I'm looking for Super in any of my primary official titles, and it gives me a subset, but I notice I get series as well as features. By the way, this works also in hierarchy mode. If I apply my hierarchy, I can say to this search, apply super search to primary and hierarchy, and then it just shows me those titles in hierarchy mode. I can have advanced searches where I save matching criteria such as feature films for Superman, and I can apply this saved search so that every morning I may want to check on Superman, and it shows me just my feature films, both here, and I can combine them. Let's say I wanted to look for V in the title, but with my Superman filter. You see they're both checked off, and I'm getting a subset of the two searches. So searching is very powerful. One last thing I want to do before we open up the questions, because I know we're running a little late, is show you how easy it is to do what if. What if I wanted to change something to this data model? I can just go to my data model section and pick the title's data model and say in my title, maybe the synopsis currently has something like a synopsis start date or end date. So I'm going to just create that field now by saying create a field for synopsis. Synopsis, I can't spell, start date. We'll say this is of a type, you can see there's lots of types here, but I'll just use date. Synopsis date. And I'll create it. There's lots of business rules here. I can put validation rules, computational rules. I could say that you could have a maximum of 3 dates. I could put advanced rules. We don't have time to go through it, but I'd love to show it to you one day. When I publish this change, It reviews and says, yes, you want to create synopsis data. I say yes, I publish, and it goes out to all of my data sets. That means all active workflows, all the people that are working in the UI, everybody automatically gets that. So when I look now at, let's say, I'll do that search for Spider-Man again, or Superman rather. Well, let's say I take Superman Man of Steel, and I look at his synopsis. I could see now I have something called synopsis date, and I can add 3 of them. EDX has also generated functions to give me today's date or calendar pickers so that I can use this calendar picker to choose what data I want, etc., and the business rules are run against it. So we're running out of time. I wanted to make sure, Conrad, that we had a chance to ask questions.
Sounds good. And we actually do have some questions. The first question I have here is a question for Les. And it is, how is Ubisoft feeding data to downstream systems directly from EBX via standard web services, or do you extract with staging, relational database of some kind before sending data to downstream systems?
I'd say a little bit of all of them. It depends. We have part of the support group, which it consists of 6 people. 2 of those, one is primary, one is backup. We use Informatica. We use BODI. We use some some self-coded aspects as well, and we also use some web services. So it depends on the outlying system. This was something that might be interesting for people to explore a little more deeply as they go through their implementations, though. I think we were slightly considering, do you drive things from the hub, or do you federate different hubs and sync to those different hubs in different regions or different countries? And so I think if we had it to do all over again, we might spend a little bit more time standardizing in that area. And I think as we go forward in the implementation, we'll probably end up changing a lot of those. But as I mentioned earlier, even though there are different solutions or approaches to solving this dilemma, they're all very standard and governed in the way that they're applied.
There's another question here with regards to which plugins, or we actually call them add-ons, are you using from EBX? And my understanding is you're not using any, but just to clarify.
No, we're not.
Okay.
We're not. But once again, I think there are, as we move forward, I think we'll, understanding as much as we do now, when we will certainly be exploring a number of different options too. But I think we've something that was interesting to me is we've gotten a lot of really sage advice from the people at Orchestra as well too. It's funny. Sometimes I get the feeling that we're your only customer, but just appreciate you guys listening as much as you do.
And I guess we'll take this last question, and again, I guess it goes to you, Les, but it's really, I guess, one about team structure. How many people do you need, required competency, governance? It's kind of in rough terms what this person is asking about.
Well, what you should make sure is certainly there's a project workforce, and then there's a sustaining workforce. The governance committee should stand the test of time. So even after the project is completed, you want to make sure that your steering committee stays in place. As I mentioned, as we moved from the physical to digital world as well, make sure that you add on to your steering committee with the same kind of governance or roles that you had during the implementation. So for us, we had representatives from the countries and the organizations, production, distribution, and legal. And then when we started moving to digital, we added a digital person to the to the team as well. So the VP of digital publishing is now part of that steering committee, so that we maintain that governance and consistency for that part that we're adding on as well. And so we also have 6 people that are represented on the IT team. At the moment, there's a project manager, there's a business analyst, 2 technical people, and then a person that also runs a larger BI organization. And so this isn't a full-time job for them, so don't think that just because you're doing this process that you suddenly have to increase your workforce to sustain it. There is a portion of that you have to respect. However, it doesn't mean that then becomes their full-time job to do this, but they certainly need to respect it so that you sustain your governance criteria.
Some very good advice. And I guess with that, we're about 3 minutes over our webinar, and so I guess we're going to sign off. Thank you very much, Les, for your time, and Scott,
My
you
pleasure.
as well. And of course, for all of those that attended, thank you for spending an hour with us. Looks like quite happily everyone is pretty much enthralled. And if you have any questions or would like to talk to someone, feel free to email sales@orchestranetworks.com or visit our website, which is www.orchestranetworks.com. Thanks, and have a great day.
Bye now.